Hello guys, Horn MMA 13 here, back with another prediction video, this time for UFC Noche, Lopes versus Silva. This one's a brilliant card from San Antonio, Texas, so, a lot of Mexicans in the crowd, Mexican-Americans, and there's a lot on this card, the main card specifically. Starting with the first fight on the main card, Santiago Luna versus Li Kwang. Now, these two, both, Klang is debuting in the UFC. Really looking good. He's looking like he's going to be a danger. He's been, from the regional scene, the Asian area. He's been good. He's had knockouts. He's actually, I think, knocked out pretty much every opponent that he's faced. And he's fighting a guy in Luna who loves to scrap. So this one's probably, there's another fight on this card that I think could be the fight of the night, but this one's probably the favourite. If I was to predict a fight of the night, I think it's probably going to be this one. Both guys will want it bad because both of them need a win desperately. Klang on his debut, Luna always comes to scrap. I think the only problem is that with them both being relatively inexperienced, especially in a crowded event like this on a big major card, I could see them also being a bit hesitant early. And it's just really going to come down to who gets comfortable first, if that makes sense. Like, whoever gets the pace set first and gets their kind of foot in the fight and starts dictating, I feel like could win, basically. Like, that could be basically dictating who's going to win this fight, who gets started quicker, because they're both pretty evenly matched. I don't think either of them are right now in the career, top level, but I think they're definitely prospects and they could rise to the top of the division. I've got to go with Kang on this. I just think he's got the more finishing potential. I think it's going to be more volume from Luna, and I think Kang's going to be landing the more damaging shots. Pretty similar, actually, to a fight who's on this card, Jared Gordon, when he faced Nasrat Akparast last year. When Akparast landed probably the more volume, but Gordon landed the more damaging shots, and the volume won that fight. The difference here is I think that Kang's going to end up getting a finish. I think it's going to come in the third round. I think they're going to be scrappy in the first, but it's going to start a bit slow, so people are going to think, ooh, this one's going to be cagey, and then it's going to explode into life midway through the first. I think the second, they're going to start from where they left off. They're going to just start throwing at each other. I can see Luna trying to get him against the fence and use some of that dirty boxing in the clinch. And then from there, I can really see Krang starting to conserve energy, just keep calm and wait for the shot and the moment, because he'll realise if he's too reckless, he's going to get clinched up and he's going to get a bit bullied in the clinch. And then I think he's going to just start being a bit smarter. And then when there's a bit of that moment of clarity and the storm calms, I can see him landing one on the chin of Luna, just catching him as he comes in for another flurry, catching him curled, putting him out. I think it's going to be a highlight reel knockout in the third round. It's going to be a late finish, so it could either be a fight of the night or performance of the night for him. But I think it's going to be Kang in the third, late, and I think he's going to catch him in that moment of clarity when he can just have a bit of moment to time him and think and get that superior skill on show, because he is the more tactical fighter of the two, but he can obviously hold his own in a scrap as well. He's a young guy and he's also really explosive, so them guys are always dangerous when you're getting into a fist fight and you're getting into a bit of a shootout in the middle of the cage. So I think in the fence, that's where Luna wants to be. He wants to get him against the fence where he's not going to be as explosive, getting backing up, moving backwards. If it comes down to a fight where it's in the middle of the octagon, I feel like it's going to suit Kang, and I think that's where the finish will come, when there's a bit of moment of bit brief respite and he can just time him coming in when he goes for that next flurry, because he does stop sometimes. Luna, he tends to have a bit of flurry, then he'll kind of calm down a bit, and then he'll come back for another one, try and time it. But I feel like when you're fighting someone who's so explosive, you've got to be so careful where you do that, because if they're not on the back foot, they can knock you out with any punch. And I feel like that's where the finish will come, in the middle of the octagon, when he's coming in for a flurry. Moving on, fight number 2 on the main card. Alexander Hernandez versus Diego Ferreira, or Carlos Diego Ferreira, whichever one you want to call him. Ferreira, Rocher, whatever. Good fight. Gastelum, he's next. Don't worry, we'll talk about that fat guy soon. Alexander Hernandez, very, very well-rounded guy. Been in the UFC seems like forever. We tend to think he's old, but he's actually not that old. He's like 33. He was very young when he had his little rise at the beginning, and then he got fraud checked by a cowboy. He was young back then. He's still relatively in his prime. 34 is usually when you come out of that for most fighters. There's a fighter on this card who actually got better after that, but you know, he's in his prime, what you'd think. And he's fighting for Diego Ferreira. Now, I think Carlos Diego Ferreira, who's booked to fight Bobby Green recently, and I was worried for Bobby in that fight. I thought that was a terrible matchup, and I thought that was a perfect matchup for CDF. I thought it was a good matchup for him. I don't think anyone's ever called him that, sorry. But I think this one is a nightmare matchup for him. Well-rounded guys who just have skills everywhere are people who Ferreira he ain't going to be able to beat because he's not got that extra level in him anymore where he can kind of use his dangerous and he's like his finishing potential like to get fights won. He can't do that now. He's not as fast. He's not as fast twitch. He's not as dangerous. And the only type of fighters who we can beat are one-dimensional fighters because he's very good on the feet and he kind of has decent takedown defence, but it's not something that gets tested a lot because he tends to get put with low-level brawlers in his matchups on the apex. So in this fight, he's fighting Alexander Hernandez, who's good everywhere. He's fast, he's athletic, and I feel like he's just going to have too much for CDF. I feel like he's going to have way too much for him. And I think when he's fighting him at a pace, what's going to be quite intense, it's going to be really hard for Ferrer because he's aging now. He was just in a training camp to fight someone who likes to counter-strike. So he'd been looking at coming forward and trying to put pressure on and cutting the cage off. He's now fighting someone who literally goes in there to come forward at you. So he's going to be the guy looking to counter-punch now. I feel like that's a bit of a disruption in his preparation. And he's just the younger, better, more rounded guy. He's like a younger version of Ferreira almost, except he probably doesn't have the same level of finishing potential. Hernandez does go to a lot of decisions. I think he's going to get the decision here. I think it's going to be a relatively eventful fight. I don't think it'll be a bad fight by any means, but it'll be a bit of a come down from the one before. But I do see that I really just have a feeling that he's going to be able to figure out Ferreira very quickly and just use his superior tactical striking and use his superior body kicks, his better jab, he's just better all round, to be honest with you, as a fighter. But Ferreira, he's like a bit like Thiago Moises, but probably not as successful in his career. He's just kind of that guy who he'll go for a brawl and he'll sometimes get the better of you and sometimes he'll lose. And then when he fights someone who's got a bit of an upward trajectory, he tends to get found out because he doesn't have the same level of motivation as these young up-and-comers. I know that Alexander Hernandez has been in the UFC a while, but he's still a young guy and he's got hunger, man. He's fighting a lot. He's been fighting quite regularly. He's fought, like, I think this is his second or third time fighting this year. He's really, really got the hunger still. And Ferreira's not been in the cage for a long time. So I'm going to go with Hernandez for the decision. I think it'll be mostly on the feet, this fight. It'll be exciting enough. But I think he's going to get the win 29-28 because I think Ferreira may have a round where he possibly nicks it just by being a bit of a vet and just getting him stalled and getting him smothered maybe because he does like to come forward and he likes to land punches in the pocket and he likes to also switch with his shots. He does like to land a lot of kicks as well, leg kicks, which I haven't mentioned in this one actually. That was a point I wanted to make. Ferreira does have a good leg kick and he could land some of those on the more kind of static stance Hernandez, who likes to really squat on his feet. And I could see some of them kicks causing damage. That's the only road to victory I can see if he slows Hernandez down with those. Otherwise, I think it'll be a 29-28 decision for Hernandez. Moving on. Kelvin Gastelum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Gastelum, man, he's just done at this point. I really don't see why people still even pick him to win fights. Like, he got a robbery win over Daniel Rodriguez, who I know he had a good win recently, Rodriguez, so people might think that's not the worst thing in the world, but Rodriguez really isn't that good. And he got a robbery win over him after also being overweight in that fight and was lucky he even got to fight. He's fighting Stoltzfus, who He's pretty good, man. I like Stoltzfus. I think he's quite exciting. He's quite powerful. He's a middleweight who actually has a bit of explosivity, which you usually only see with the, let's just say, urban kind of guys in that division. You know what I'm talking about? You know, the guys who tend to land one punch around, but they're very, very explosive. You know, I won't name the names because then we'll know what I meant by urban. But you know what I'm talking about. There's a few guys in that lower end of the middleweight division outside the rankings who have a bit of explosivity. One of them might be called Emmers. But yeah, they're good, man. They're both good in a way, but they're both also not good. Like, I think Stoltzfus tends to gas out. He's quite explosive, as I just said. And I think Gastelum, even though he's got great volume and he's sometimes got great heart, like against Curtis, one of my favourite fights of 2023. I believe that was on the MSG card back then. He, he sometimes just looks really not want to be there, and he just wants to be in the taco place, just having loads and loads of guacamole. You know, sometimes he just really looks like he doesn't want to be in the cage. I feel like, if anything, the only thing is, it seems to correlate a lot of the time that Gastelum's good performances tend to come when he's fighting someone in a crowd. The only time I think he had a bad performance in a crowd was actually at the biggest arena at MSG back against Darren Till, but I think that was more the fact that he just didn't have any answers for Till that night. We now got Darren Till is the legend, the greatest, the all-time GOAT, come on. But yeah, I think Gastelum's just not that good, and I think Stoltzfus, his main thing is the fact he's powerful, man, but Gastelum don't get knocked out. So I'm going to be honest with you, even though I've bigged up Stoltzfus, I think they've given him the worst matchup in the boulder head of Kelvin Gastelum. So using the Darren Till slang, you know, got to show him respect to him. The big boulder head. But yeah, he's going to get worn out punching Gastelum in the face, basically. It's going to be the Homer Simpson syndrome. I think Gastelum's going to get the win here, man. I think they've given him a good matchup in Mexico. I think he's going to get a pretty tight decision. I think he's going to lose the first, and he's going to be losing the first half of the second, and then I feel like Stoltzfus will gas at that point like he usually does, and then that's when Gastelum will take over, and I think he'll win the second round from there, and then he'll probably nick that, and then I think the third round he'll win clearly, and I think he'll nick a 29-28 decision, but I think it'll be one of those where we're like, who won that second round, if you know what I mean. That's going to be the round that people are going to be debating over, but I think Gastelum will do enough towards the end when Stoltzfus gasses. Moving on to what I think is going to be the fight of the night on this card. I cannot wait for this fight, man. I've got this in a parlay. Rafa Garcia versus Jared Flash Gordon, man. Put some respect on the Flash's name, right? This guy, Jared Gordon, I've actually been doing my homework for this card. I've been watching some Jared Gordon fights, man. And this guy is entertaining, man. People forget, man. Jared Gordon, when he fought Bobby Green, man, he was throwing judo shit. He was throwing these, like, Bruce Lee rolls, man. I don't know what I'd call them. Like, he was piecing up Green, which not many people do against Bobby Green. You usually just knock him out when he's being goofy, like Drew Dober style. Jared, even though he had all the disadvantages in reach, and that was piecing up Bobby on the counter against Grant Dawson, an underrated fight where he did get finished Gordon, but that was just through to Grant Dawson turned into Marab and just spamming takedowns, takedown maxing. But he was throwing rolls out of guillotines and shit. I think he got him in a guillotine on the takedown, did a roll, and then ended up on top. Jared Gordon's got some slick skills, man. On the feet, counter wrestling, defensive grappling. He's so good, man. I am a big fan of watching Jared Gordon fight. And I know people just know him from the Paddy Pimblett fight. You know, that's kind of become one of the most infamous fights in UFC history at this point. Like, forget about it, man. It was... I actually don't think that was a robbery. That's my controversial take. I'm not being biased there, you know. I'm a fan of Paddy, but I think that fight. Anyway, we're not going to go into that shit. But yeah, I am. Jared Gordon's good to watch. He's had wins over Thiago Moises, great win. Marco Masden, he retired that guy. Good fighter, Marco Masden. You know, he didn't have the best UFC career, but he's hard to beat and he's hard to knock out in the first round. So he knocked out him in the first round. He knocked out Thiago Moises in the first round. He's knocked out a random guy called Quinones, Mexican. Let's just put that in there because of the theme. He's beaten people like Joe Solecki. He's beaten a lot of guys, man, to be honest with you. He's beaten Bill Alger for his regional belt he won. He's beaten some really tough competition, to be honest with you. And everyone he's beaten has been in the prime as well, people. You know, like, that was when Alger was actually quite good. He's retired. We'll miss that guy. But he's fighting Rafa Garcia here, a guy who does throw a lot of volume. And Jared Gordon has in the past been edged by people who just out-volume him at times. We've seen that. We've seen it against Nasrat. We've seen it in a way against Paddy. He didn't throw as many shots, did he, in that fight, especially in the later rounds. He didn't seem to sometimes realise that he can multitask. He can throw shots as well as grapple and put you against the cage. Jared's more of like a grinding fighter who tries to wear on you thinking he's got more time than he has sometimes, and he likes to wear on you slowly. He's a bit like a Pierre Yan, except without the unbelievable striking. Jared's more of a typical boxer who likes to counter you. And I think Gordon's got this one, man. I think we're going to see a really good performance. I think this is going to be the fight of the night. But the reason I think that, because I do think Jared's going to win this clearly, but I think that Rafa Garcia is going to have some crazy moments, like where he's got Jared and you think he's hurt, but then we realise, oh, Rafa has pillow hands, but we think he's hurting Gordon. And then I feel like Gordon's going to just land the thudding shots that really catch the eyes of the judges. I think it's going to be a repeat of the Nasrat Haqparast fight, but Jared's going to actually get some more damage in this one, because if you saw against Thiago Moises, which was his first fight after the Haqparast fight, he looked just more lethal, man. And I know he knocked out Moises, but Rafa has got a good chin, so I don't necessarily know if he's going to be able to do that. But I think Jared's just going to be throwing like some Hail Mary shots in this one, really trying to get that knockout, because that would be a statement if you knock out Rafa Garcia. That would be impressive. Like, that would really, really show people, like, Jared Gordon's become a different fighter. Like, no, Masvidal late in his career all of a sudden become a knockout guy from a decision guy. That's kind of the thing we're going on with Jared Gordon here. Like, he's really becoming more of a dangerous fighter. He used to just be that guy that you thought, shit, this is going to be a tough night. Now you're thinking, oh, I might get knocked out here. And Rafa Garcia is going to really, I think, catch, like, this is going to be the peak performance for Jared, I think. This is like catching a fighter at his peak. As I said earlier, most fighters peak at after 34, that's the peak done. Jared peaked at 34 when he fought Paddy. He fought Leonardo Santos, another great win. He retired that guy as well. Jared Gordon's had some underrated wins, man, in the lightweight division. He's a pretty good lightweight fighter. I think he's got like 9 wins in the lightweight division. This will like be his 10th if he wins. So people are sleeping on Jared, man. I know he's the favourite in this fight, so I don't necessarily mean they're sleeping on him here, but they're actually sleeping on the fact this guy is like top 15 level, low level of the top 15. He's good. And I think he's going to get the win here. If he gets a finish, I think it'll come by ground and pound, because he ain't knocking out Garcia like he did Moises. But I think he's going to get a really, really entertaining decision victory here, where he causes visible damage and he cuts open Rafa, unlike in the fight against Haqparast, where he didn't get that. I think he's going to cut open Rafa and he's going to make it look very, very violent, and he's going to get the win. And he's going to really have a strong claim to fight a big name like a Renato Moicano after this. I think this is going to be the fight where people actually realise Jared Gordon is the guy in the lightweight division out of all the veterans. Like, he's the guy that they're going to put in there. Like, if you want to make a name, you're going to be facing Jared Gordon. He's going to become the Neil Magny of the lightweight division. So I think Jared's going to get a... I actually think it could be like similar to Bobby Green versus Jim Miller, like a 30-27 where it's still like one of the best fights of the night. I think that's the type of performance we're getting. I think Jared will win every round, but I think it'll be entertaining even in every round. It'll be one of those fight of the nights where it's still like a clear winner, but it was so enjoyable because the violence was just on point, and there's going to be a lot of blood. And Jared does have a bit of scar tissue, so I could see him getting cut open, but that happened in his Moises fight, and that literally went one round, so that's no crazy, really. He just has a lot of scar tissue. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening. Rob Font versus David Martinez. Now, this fight is another one on my parlay, so I have Gordon to win on my parlay. My other one is Martinez, so I'm going to spoil this one for you, really, man. I'm going with Martinez in this one. Not going to beat around the bush. Rob Font is 38 years of age. He's always been an up-and-down fighter. People are going to go back to the fight when he fraud-checked Yanez, when he fraud-checked Adrian Yanez, and Yanez just got embarrassed in the first round on the main card of that pay-per-view, like 2022, I think that was. That's not happening here, man. He's getting pieced up by Martinez and probably going to get beaten up on the ground. I can see a first-round finish here. I don't think there's going to be much in this fight. I think it's going to be really quick. I think it's going to be Rob Font coming out there thinking he's just going to school this young kid, thinking he's going to show him who's boss. New England cartel, he's going to be on that type shit, but he's going to get beaten up by Martinez. I think he's going to get really hit bad to the body as well. I can really see Martinez landing some knees, and a vicious knees at that, grabbing him, landing knees to the thigh as well, because I can see a bit of grappling against the fence, getting those old ancient legs, losing blood flow. And then I can just see him haggering with elbows to the side of the head. I can see him off. I can actually see him getting the back and subbing him, because Martinez has got some good submissions in his career. I can see him actually getting the back after elbowing him and repeatedly switching on the ground when he's got him down after really badly hurting him to the side of the head and getting him covering up. I can see him maybe switching to a body lock and then maybe grabbing the neck when he comes to switch, maybe tricking him, maybe going as if he's going to get mount and then just catching him in a rear naked. I can really see that happening for some reason, because I feel like Font is really lost sometimes when he's on the ground. And I feel like Martinez is one of the smarter grapplers, where instead of just going for what he wants to go for, using brute force, he tends to do a lot of fakes when he's on the ground, and then he'll switch to a different position when you're least expecting it. He's done that before, where he goes for that mount, but then he'll quickly switch back to the rear naked, because he tends to lock your body with his legs quickly, and he gets that position, and then he'll go and try and switch up, and then once you try and turn, he'll catch you back. That's something he's really good at doing, making you kind of do the next move, and then he kind of puts you in his hands. So I think he's going to do that. He's going to land a lot of shots, use some good grappling transitions, and I think he's going to get the rear naked choke early after elbows and probably knees to the body before then. Moving on to the main event of the evening, Diego Lopes versus Jan Silva. Now, this is a great main event, man. Jan Silva, great prospect. He's been very entertaining on his rise. The king of autism. He's overtaken Arnold Allen. He hasn't fought for long. He's been out too long now. He don't get that mental anymore. Sorry, Arnold. He's so out there with his, even with his style, to be honest with you. Not many people are throwing ninja chokes out there and spinning elbows, and then next minute they're throwing out these weird grappling exchanges, and he's very, very interesting as a fighter. He tends to really mix the arts up in a very uncoordinated, almost no rhythm or readable way. You can't see a flow in what he does. He tends to just pull things out of the fire. Pull things out the fire! That's flashback to Leon Edwards' autistic coach. It's really good to watch him fight, man. I love watching him. Diego Lopes, man, he's still so dangerous, though. Look at the Volk fight. He nearly had Volk out of there, and I think it was the second, man. In, by the way, the best main event of this year in UFC 314 in Miami. And people forget, man, Diego Lopes is really, really dangerous in the first 2 or 3 rounds. And I feel like Jane Silva's most productive rounds are usually those rounds. He's never really had a fight where I thought he's got better as the fight's gone along. The Bryce Mitchell fight, he was piecing up Bryce early in that fight and then got the finish. And it kind of slowed down before the finish. That's what I mean by things will come out of nowhere. You'll think he's calming down, and then all of a sudden he'll do something explosive or out of nowhere. So I feel like in this fight, he's going to use that grappling that I've mentioned. I feel like he's going to have to, because Diego Lopes is so dangerous. And I feel like the stockier guy is always best going for those grappling transitions, because it can really, really throw off these guys, because they've got the lower centre of gravity, which I always say. That's why I feel like Volkanovski did the right thing in his fight against Lopes. And I feel like he could use that as a blueprint, because I feel like Jane Silva has got a lot of the attributes, at least physically, that Alex Volkanovski has got. So I think he's going to have to use a very mixed style in this fight. I think if he goes out there striking with Diego, I actually think Gene could get chinned. I think this fight's going to end by a finish, and I think it's going to come in the 3rd round, and I think it's going to be good old Diego. I think he's going to get this one done, man. I really do think Lopes is going to show you that he's still the prospect in this division. He's the guy. Because, I mean, in that Volk fight, even, man, it showed to me that he's a top quality fighter. Like, if he'd have knocked out Volk in, I think it was that second round, I think it'd have been a quicker finish than what Ilya got against Volk. Like, people are bigging up Ilya's performance against Volk, man. Ilya looked worse early in that fight than Lopes did. Lopes was explosive, man. And if we're talking about Volkanovski, he was coming off a short like period after getting knocked out against Ilya. He won against Diego. Like, what if he'd have been coming off that same layoff in that Diego fight and Diego had got the knockout there because Volk was still recovering? That'd have been more impressive than Ilya's performance. And then we'd be calling Diego the GOAT. You know what I mean? Like, people are so quick to just judge on a final part of the puzzle. Like, Diego Lopes is still very dangerous, man. And this is a big step up for Gene Silva. And I think Lopes is going to get him out of there in the third. And I think he's going to do it by just unloading on him against the fence and throwing loads of different combinations to the body, to probably a few. I could even see him going for some really nasty tight elbows because Arnold Allen, Dan Hooker style elbows against the fence and then a run off like KO. That's like my new term when you finish someone against the fence and the ref just steps in and you run off like you've just like put him out cold. That's what type of finish I see here. I don't see Gene going out cold, but I see him catching him, hurting him, and just messing him up with elbows and shots to the body and then just piecing him up against the cage. And that's how I think it'll end. I think Gene will win the first round, possibly just by using that grappling I mentioned. And then I think the second, Gene will start to try and have a bit of a war. He'll get possibly a bit of success, but Diego will just land the more damaging shots. And then once he's opened him up to feeling the power and getting a bit more hesitant, I feel like he's going to bully him towards the cage and get a finish against there with the landing shots and elbows to the back, to the head, and then landing some brutal knees as well, probably to the stomach, and probably even landing some of those teeps to get him there. I think that's going to be a big part of him getting cutting off the distance of Gene Silva, just using teeps, using his length, and then using his explosive entries as well. When he's coming in to throw shots, he tends to like run at you. He almost throws like running shots at times, like, you know, like when you're on UFC 5 and you press like down on the analog and you start running, then you throw the jab. He kind of fights like a NPC My Career Mode tutorial fighter. He fights like he's just been given like max stats on his striking. But then when he comes into the third, you've got no like stamina usually. But then in this particular scenario, he has got stamina because he's leveled up since you fought Volk. You've got a bit more XP. Sorry, I'm getting carried away. Basically, he's going to finish him against the cage. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been fun. I'm looking forward to this card. Fight of the night is going to be Jared v. Rafa. And I think the performance of the night is going to be our good old mate Diego Lopes with a comeback after finishing our other entertaining friend Gene, because I'm a fan of Gene. I just think it's going to get finished and I want to see the fighting nerds crying. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Watch and subscribe. Bye bye.